have to be careful in family systems, importantly, that those are the roles. And if the person is the victim and you're just constantly rescuing them and fighting for them and, sticking up for them and protecting them and covering them and being angry with them, then you're keeping the cycle going, and they're least likely to be empowered and walk in the status of freedom. And so you can't be both. You have to help the person who's been offended decide, do you want to you want this to be, do you want to be tortured by this, or do you want this event to tutor you? You can be tortured or tutored, but you can't be both. And so you have to weigh the cost and decide. And just in the choice is empowering, because when you feel offended and you feel victimized, then you feel like there's no choice. So it's important that we present to ourselves and to others that we're working with. You have to decide at some point, do you want to continue to be tortured by this, or do you want this event to be the tutor and you want to learn from it and grow from it? Do you want to continue to be furious, or do you want to turn to curious and think about, why did they do this? What can I learn from this? How can this develop me? Like, to research it and to find out, where did I make the mistake? What role did I play in this? Did I not have boundaries? Was I looking to be a people pleaser? Was I afraid to confront? What role did I play? Become curious. What role did I play in this? Because that helps in the forgiveness process and the reconciliation process. So you have to decide, do I want to another example, do I want to be wounded, or do I want the wisdom? You can forever be wounded, or you could just decide, I'm going to walk in wisdom. I'm going to make this work for me. I'm going to make this work for me. I am going to come out of this. I can't change what happened, but I can change the narrative, because now I'm wiser. And now I understand what I need to do, or how human behavior is, how to protect myself, and how to be developed, and how to forgive, and how to be morally courageous. And there's so much to learn, and you get to learn it, and you get to demonstrate that you are no longer just the victim, but you are now walking in victory. So you get to decide what is most attractive. And for some people, I'm telling you, unfortunately, being the victim is more attractive. You get more empathy and sympathy, and you're less accountable, and you don't have to show up, because you're injured and you're frail and you're fragile. But that helpless state leads to hopelessness, and it creates more anger. The cost of being the victim is very expensive. You miss out on intimate relationships. You miss out on fully developing, and it's just too great. And you can still have the things that you get from being the victim when you find healthy people, because healthy people should not just love you when you're hurt, because then that's how trauma bonds are built. We went through this together, and families do it all the time. They build trauma bonds. Remember, they did this to us. Remember that molestation? And now we form a connection based on the pain. And that becomes our common ground of why we're connected. And we don't have anything new to connect with. So the relationship is stunted in the pain. And now we're not having good memories that we're building. We're just always connected, associated by pain. Watch the trauma bonds. There's a lot of trauma bonds in families. And you have to watch it, because while it feels secure and net and you need the support, that's the essence of the relationship. I call it friends in a foxhole, because you went through that time together, you feel closer. And the only thing keeps you connected is hating the person who did it, or being angry together. So that's not healthy. And so you have to know that you can build a healthy relationship outside of connecting with people to be angry at the mother, father, sister, cousins, brother. Happens all the time. People hook up, and now they're all mad at one person, and then someone else falls out with that person, so they go to this group that's mad at that person, and that's how you have family division and war. They take on the campaign of unforgiveness, and they have that trauma bond and that anger bond. No more anger bonds. and people will want you to join them in their anger bond. So just look at the roles and look at the gains that people are trying to get. The secondary gains we talk about are the empathy, the triangulation, the attention, the memorializing the pain. Like, don't memorialize the pain. Our memory is set to help you do it, but you have to on purpose decide not to memorialize the pain and not to be loyal to the suffering. You get to move on. It does not excuse the behavior. You have to reinforce that. It doesn't excuse the behavior, and it doesn't invalidate the incidents. For you to be happy and for you to move on does not say it didn't happen. And you have to assure yourself, your clients, the congregation, and the people in your family, me moving on does not say that it didn't happen and it wasn't offensive. Me moving on is not saying that I don't love you. So that becomes something to look at. And you have to focus on wellness. Focus on wellness. Choosing wellness, because unforgiveness is a disease. Even medical science is classifying it as a disease. Unforgiveness is a disease. So if we want wellness, we have to focus on the we in wellness. And the we in wellness is I'm focusing on connecting in a positive way. I'm focusing on unity. I'm focusing on things that build. This is my tactic. This is how I'm going to get through it. I want wellness, so I'm going to do things that promote unity. What happens with the other side of it, if you're focusing on illness, then it's the I. The isolation in illness is the I in illness is isolation. So if there's isolation, there's always going to be illness, and if there's wellness, there's always going to be we-ness. So you have to decide as a defensive tactic: am I going to focus on we-ness or I-ness, which is illness? I-ness, selfishness, is always equated to illness. It is an enemy against your health and the health of other people. So wellness, we-ness versus I-ness. And then there is what I talked about with the narratives. More specifically, there's literally a therapy called narrative therapy, whereas you get to change how you tell the story. That's the only change. The change how you tell the story. That is the difference between night and day. How you narrate. You are the narrator. I am the narrator. Our clients and our congregation, they are the narratives of their story. Some things they cannot change. They cannot change the abandonment. They cannot change the sexual abuse. They cannot change the betrayal. But they get to add a twist. The story is not over. They continue to have the power of the pen, and they get to tell the story. They get to make it a beautiful ending, or they get to make it a crash cut ending. The person who offended you is not responsible for the ending of the narrative story. You and I are responsible for how we respond and how we continue to write. They may have written a segment that you can't erase: betrayal, parents on drugs, sexual abuse, whatever. But the other part, the pen gets handed back to you. The power is in the pen, and you have the pen. And the pen can only be implemented correctly if your narrative, the way you think. So after we shift, you remember we talked about shifting, adding to the story. Now you have the power of the pen. How do you want this to end? What lessons do you want to learn? What positive things can we extrapolate from this offense? The offense is horrible, but it's not the end of the story. It's a part of the chapter. It's not the book. Unless you make it the book. If you want to make it the book and you want to make it the ending, like I was sexually abused and I was miserable and I lived in isolation and I had a horrible life, the end. You get to choose, but by goodness, you get to choose also to turn the story around through narrative therapy or through narrative writing and journaling or narrative scripting in your mind. So you have to get the clients to imagine, and you have to let them know the power of the pen, the power to think, the power to move into creativity. How would you like the world to be now? Because responding is a prefrontal cortex operation, and it is a power operation because you have to plan. But it's difficult and impossible to plan and to have power over the pen in a constructive way if you're just in your feelings. So it's important to get the feelings out, get the pen, and then create. Create the life that you want now. Do you want to stay in unforgiveness? Do you want to be a forgiving person? What do you want? Do you want to always have the empathy and be babied and be and forgiveness bonds with people, unforgiveness bonds with people? You have the pen. I have the pen. Our clients have the pen. The congregation needs the pen. And they need to know that although you were victimized by the offense, now you have the victory of being able to write out your ending. She lived happily ever after. He overcame and lived happily ever after. That is the responsibility of the person who has been wounded. And so by doing that and changing the story, adding to the story changes the story because you can't change the event. It allows you, like I stated, to get online with your prefrontal cortex. And so in some of the practices to becoming online with your prefrontal cortex is a breathing technique. They have different type of breathing techniques, 4x4 breathing. They have the even breathing where you breathe in and you breathe out. This is all important because it accesses your prefrontal cortex because your mind and your sympathetic nervous system is saying fight, flight, run, freeze. It's like just really crazed. But if you want to get back online, if you want to tap into your university, breathing techniques, breathe in, hold for 4, exhale 4, like you're blowing out a birthday cake. It's worth doing. I'm going to do it again. Breathe in for 4, hold for 4, exhale for 4. And by getting your client and yourself to practice this, you're putting yourself in a position to come back online, to calm down.